Welcome to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm Kathy, and this season is dedicated to exploring the unique world of raising boys. Parenting boys today can feel like trying to crack a complicated code, a mystery, especially when it comes to understanding their inner emotional world. Together, we'll dive into real life stories, share practical tips, and uncover insights to help you and your son thrive, not just survive. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's unlock the parenting code, one boy at a time. Welcome back to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm your host, Kathy, and today I'm excited to welcome Azja Pryor. Azja is a baby-wearing educator trained by the Center for Baby-Wearing Studies with 6 years experience and a passion for helping parents experience the transformative benefits of baby-wearing. Azja has a diverse background with notable success across several fields, including roles as a health and fitness coach and a casting director for music videos. Azja is also the proud mother of 2 children born 18 years apart. Azja, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathy.
So, when I was doing my research for this, I read a paragraph that was talking about you, and I thought it just really struck me. So I wanted to just read that little description of you and go from there. So it says that Azja Pryor is a talented and multifaceted individual who has navigated the ups and downs of life with grace and determination. Her ability to reinvent herself and succeed in different fields is a testament to her resilience and unwavering spirit. So I loved those parts of it, especially the reinventing yourself. So it sounds like you have a very interesting backstory, and I wonder if we can start there. Like, how did you arrive at this point where you are today?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you again so much for having me. It is truly an honor to be on your podcast. Let's see. How did I arrive where I am today? So I'm a mother 2 times over. As you mentioned, I had my son very early in my life. And then 18 years later, I decided to extend the motherhood fun and started all over, and my daughter was born. And so having a son earlier in my life, it was kind of like I grew up with him to a certain
Mhm.
extent, right? We were both, I was still young and, still learning about myself and learning about who I am in this world. And so I did that while I was actually raising this young human, and it was amazing. Looking back, I am actually really proud of myself. I give myself a pat on the back because my son is an amazing human being. And so, yes, I went through many different careers. I started as a casting associate, and then grew from there and decided to move more into the wellness space and became a health and wellness coach. I also did event planning. So there was like all these different things, as you're growing, you're discovering yourself. And how I became a baby wearing educator, which I also work in the marketing world. But I work for a baby wearing brand, and I discovered baby wearing with my daughter, and fell in love with it, with that whole journey. Baby wearing was an incredible tool for myself that second time around in my parenting journey. And so I consider it like the gift that keeps on giving. So I help other families. I've developed other relationships with other families who also want to learn more about baby wearing or have incorporated it. And so that's the space that I'm in right now. I'm spreading awareness about it. And I am really enjoying being a parent a second time around to a daughter, which is a completely different experience, as I'm sure you can imagine, being a mom, a boy mom for 18 years. And
Mhm.
now I have a girl. So it's like this, these polar opposites, this completely new reality, having a daughter later in life, right? In the beginning, I was very young, and now I'm a more mature, seasoned mom. So that in itself is a whole nother journey. So, I'm just forever evolving, and this is where I am and how I have gotten to where I am right now.
Um, when you were saying that, I had the image of you know, I don't know if you've skydived before, but I jumped out of an airplane once because I wanted to try and get over my fear of heights. I thought, okay, that'll do it. But I was so terrified. I did it, but I was so terrified. I had my eyes closed the whole way. And I really thought, I want to do it one more time with my eyes open. And when you were talking about uh, your first child and being young and growing up with him, I thought, well, there's really similarities, like that you've got it's really two different people at the time of birth and two different people raising the child. So you have quite an interesting perception of, parenting all the way around. Was there any surprising challenges or advantages or disadvantage in raising your child like almost 2 decades ago and then currently raising your daughter today?
Um, I feel like, well, both of my children, I feel like have the advantages because my son got the best part of me at that phase in my life, right? Where I was still learning and, my eyes were open wide. And so that I feel like that was an amazing time, right? I was still like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, whatever
Yeah.
the saying is. And with my daughter, obviously my eye is more keen. I'm more aware of things, but I'm more present now, I have to say, without a doubt. So there were advantages at both, in both different chapters of my life. I will say I feel like my daughter now has the most present version of myself, the most wise version, right? You learn so much over the years, and obviously parenting for nearly 2 decades. I went into this fully aware that this too shall pass.
Hmm.
All of those phases, those terrible twos and the witching hours and all of the things that happen, and when you're a new parent and you're like, oh my God, am I ever going to get through this? I knew I was going to get through it and I knew I was going to be fine. I knew she was going to be okay. And so I was able to be present and I really intentionally now make sure that I am recording, whether it be mentally, whether it be, some kind of physical recording. I am recording every single moment because I just know how precious these years are and they go by so fast.
Yeah. Has anything changed in how, like, I know there would be some differences, and you've mentioned some of them, but like your parenting approach, like when you were talking about baby wearing, and you said that you've started it with your daughter. First of all, I just want to step back. When you first told me, and I started looking at this baby wearing, I didn't know what you were talking about. It was one of these things that always their new vocabulary since I've, left North America and that I'm not aware of. And I must say, I didn't get it. Like, if there has been such a trend away from that, like where I am, especially in Japan, and this is where our son grew up, it's, it's still the norm. You strap the baby on your back.
Mhm.
So he's either in the back or he's in the front because of, the world doesn't stop because you have a child. So it was more the norm. So
Mhm.
I was just wondering, because you said that was one of the differences between your son and your daughter. So
Yes.
what's the story with that? Like, has it changed that people don't use the slings or the baby carriers? Like, has that gone out of fashion or something?
Well, it's coming back. Luckily, it's coming back, but you're so right. I mean, what you're seeing, what you're surrounded by as you're walking down the street and you're seeing parents with their babies on their bodies. Um, this is what our ancestors did for since the beginning of time. I mean, babies, the world didn't stop. And there was, people had to survive. People,
Mhm.
there were the hunters and the gatherers, right? And those babies had to be, we couldn't just leave our babies, to have the wolves eat them. They needed to be on us. But somewhere along the lines, the popularity of the cot and the stroller and the car seat took over, right? And so we were
Mm.
much taught that out of convenience, oh, let's lay our baby in this stroller. Let's put our baby to sleep in a car seat, which we now know is very unsafe. But there were all of these things that were introduced into our culture, and it made baby wearing kind of go far, far away. But now, over the past, I'd say, decade or so, we're seeing baby wearing coming back into the mainstream. It's the benefits of it are not nearly discussed as much as they should because it's an incredibly empowering tool for all parents, whether it be new or seasoned parents, and their babies. So yes, I love that where you are, that's pretty much the norm. Because it's something that everyone can do. And I find that there's an added level in addition to the bonding that happens between, a mother and her child, or a caregiver, a father and their child, who's wearing that baby. There's a level of convenience and confidence that it gives the parent because you can go about your life. You can go onto a busy subway and not have to worry about taking the big stroller and excuse me, bumping through crowds. Like your baby is on you, they're safe, they're comfortable, you're bonding, they're getting all of the benefits. And so it's just something I really enjoyed. It really, for my husband and I, with our daughter, it was an everyday thing that we did. It was
Yeah.
something that she looked forward to. Even as a toddler, she'd walk up to me with the carrier and say, uppy, uppy,
Yeah.
because I also breastfed my daughter for a very long time until she was almost 3 years old.
Mhm.
And I would say 90% of that feeding happened while she was in the carrier. I didn't have time to be sitting down for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, feeding her. I was up, I was active, I was doing things, and it was fine. She was comfortable. I felt good about it, and she was getting everything that she needed from me in that moment. And I don't
So,
know that I could have nursed her as long as I did if I had not been baby wearing her. And that is true because just the inconvenience of needing to sit down while you have a toddler who's basically nursing is, just not really feasible. Or it wasn't in my lifestyle.
I think one of the benefits of being a mature mom, I had my first and only child about the same age that you had your daughter.
Hmm.
And one of the things is, even if there is a trend, I think you're more willing to kind of tap into your own knowing. And even if it's going against the flow, you will do it. Like I remember when I I had come to Japan directly from Canada, and the norm, the expected behavior when you brought your child home from the hospital was to have a for them to have their own room. And so
Hmm.
I remember I had created this room, and it was like, yes, this is in the best interest of the child. And then when we brought the baby home, it was kind of like, oh, this does not feel right. He's not just coming into our room, he's coming into our bed. And um, but
Hmm.
being at an age that could say, yes, this is the way everyone is saying you're supposed to do this, but having the knowing inside that you have all those instincts inside. So I would think this whole revitalization of baby wearing is really allowing people to just, I mean, that's what's natural. That's what feels best for both baby and the parent, like that closeness, that attachment.
Yes.
So,
Yes, absolutely. Babies
um,
are hardwired to be close to their mother.
mhm,
You
Well,
think
and I
about,
think it might be the same for moms. Like when he
yes,
was not with me, my mind was always there anyway. So I could definitely be more effective and more productive if I knew he was safe and comfortable, and then I could go about in my world as well.
absolutely. How many times when your son was younger would you hear almost like, at least I remember I would hear a baby cry off, not even my own baby, and I would just start doing like this mom
Yeah.
rock.
Yeah.
It's just this innate thing that we have. It's a connection, and like you said, we're hardwired to be for that proximity, and so it just makes sense. Babies are happy and, when they're with their person, and moms are happy when they can tend to their baby's cues right away, when their babies are not screaming their heads off, it's and that bringing on more anxiety in mom, like having your baby close to you is very soothing. It regulates the emotions for both baby and mother.
Okay, so thinking back to when you had your son and thinking today, like I said, because of being a mature mom, I and also being in a foreign country. So anything I did, people just kind of reacted like, oh, well, that's a foreign thing. So maybe it was a little bit easier just to dance to my own music kind of thing. But do you find that in this period of time where parents are so influenced by social media that it's even harder to go with your own feelings and your own intuition if it's not what you're seeing on social media. Like it is a different world today than it was, 30 years ago.
Right. Oh, it's much different. Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. What I'm actually seeing is this wave of information, and I think I fell into this when I was pregnant with my daughter. There was so much information flying at me, and so many different parenting styles, attachment parenting, and all of these different things. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And even though I had had a son before, I was basically starting all over again. I was like a first time parent again, to this newborn. But I think what's happening now, and what I really love about social media, is I'm seeing a lot of encouragement for there's no one size fits all. I'm seeing space for everyone to have their own, what works for them. And I think that parents, and certainly the parents that I work with, in the different communities that I'm in, I'm seeing that there's, again, no one size fits all, and that parents are truly doing what's best for their parenting. Whether it's, more structured um, routines over here, maybe it's more, we're going to freestyle it here. Whatever it is, I'm seeing more of an acceptance for that. And I really love that.
yeah.
So I don't even think that was the case even 7 years ago when my daughter was born. But I think in the current climate, I am seeing that. Now, for me, and similar, it sounds like for you, I've always marched to the beat of my own drum, and that includes in my parenting. I think the first time around, I was just kind of learning. This time around, I'm just more accepting. I'm more accepting of, okay, not everything's going to go, how I would want it. No one's perfect. No situation is perfect. We're going to have good days, we're going to have bad days, and we embrace them all. And so it's a lot for me this time around. There's a lot more acceptance and try to, instead of always trying to fix things. And again, to take it back to what I'm seeing online and on social media, I just see a lot more room for acceptance of different parenting styles in families. And I love that.
Yeah, that's really encouraging, actually, because that's one of the things to looking at it from a lens where you've been through a lot of it, like you have with your son. It's kind of like you have a perspective that you understand that there's a lot out there, but you inevitably you have to choose what's right for you. So it's nice if there's becoming more of a recognition that that's a good thing. What about some of the societal expectations from like when you raised your son 18 years ago?
Hmm.
I'm sure you recognized some of the feelings, like what did it mean to be, a male? What was the understood way of masculinity? And then now, almost 20 years later, um, I believe it's quite different what society's expectations and understanding is of masculinity. What's been your experience?
So when my son was younger, he's incredibly blessed because he was born into just pure love, right? Two parents who adored him, a family that adored him. He was actually the first boy from like the male line on
Yeah.
his dad's side of the family. So that was a big deal.
Mhm.
And but at that time, which is actually was over 20 years ago, because now my son is older, it was, oh, especially for the fathers, like, don't kiss your son too much. Don't do this, we got to make them tough, don't, and luckily, my son being born into such a loving environment and loving home, that didn't stick, but I remember hearing a lot of those comments. Oh, you can't kiss him. Don't do this. Or, I always heard that you're going to spoil him. And I wasn't even baby wearing him. I had never wore my son. I never carried him in a baby carrier. But just in general, the holding of the baby, and just doing what every mother does in, soothing your child. That was almost at times made to feel like it was a bad thing, like I was
Yeah.
doing too much. And it's completely different now. I'm so grateful for that evolution in how we now see our boys. Now it's encouraged, more encouraged. I'm not going to say we're in a perfect world, but I do see more space for fathers to show their sons love, without that stereotype of, oh, you're going to make them soft, if you kiss your son or if you do this with your son. I now there's more like, you can't spoil a baby, so that's ridiculous for you to say don't hold the baby, so I've definitely seen how that has evolved over the years from when my son was younger to right now. But I got a lot of that when he was younger and growing up. He was the only child for 18 years. So, I was always told how I was spoiling my son, and,
Yeah.
or how he should be doing something. I'm incredibly grateful that I have a son who has always been very self-confident, and what others expected from him is not necessarily what he felt inclined to do. For example, my son has always been very tall. He was a tall black male and he was expected to play basketball. And
Yeah.
my son didn't like basketball. He wanted to play hockey.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
he would do things that he wanted to do. And I love that for him, and so there were always remarks, but there's going to be remarks about everything that we do. And again, it's just about, doing what you feel is best for yourself.
Yeah. I think sometimes what happens is that as parents, we really, because we're always trying to do what we think is the best for our children, because they're the center of our world, more or less. And sometimes I think we will go against what we think is the right thing because we think, well, if we don't, we're going to be doing them harm. If we don't toughen up our boys, we're going to, set them up for embarrassment or shame or bullying or something like that. So sometimes, because we think the end result is going to be in the best, benefit for our child, we'll go that route. But
Mhm.
what you were saying, and whether it was 20 years ago or it's today, I
Mhm.
strongly believe, and I've seen so much evidence that no matter what is going on in society, which we can always work at making society better for both males and females. But when the family unit is solid, no matter what that family unit looks like, if there's even just one person in that family unit that that child has that really strong, strong bond and connection with, they're going to be fine. Like they will turn out just fine no matter what's going on. And it sounds like, your son definitely had that. So like one of the things that is interesting about, having an older child. So how old is your son now?
25.
25. Okay, my son is 31, so I've got a few years on you. But as an adult child, like it is different. And you have to kind of like I always thought of parenting as really kind of like a dance, and every stage that from the toddlerhood to the next one to the next one to the next one, that my job was to get in step with wherever he was in his development. And so as he moved into like out of the teen years, going out into the world, going to university, if that was his choice. And those years I found a little bit harder to get that right step because he wasn't living with us. But, our connection is so deep that it was good. But personally, I found those years when he moved out from home initially the most challenging years for me as a parent, and I think probably for him as a young man beginning his journey into manhood.
Yes, absolutely. Just to backstep a little bit even more, I found that the 2 years before my son graduated high school, I felt so much anxiety building up, anticipating that, right?
Yes, me too. Yeah.
Leaving. Like I was like counting down each summer that would come, right? 10th, his sophomore year, then his junior year. I'm like, oh my God, we're like one summer closer to him basically leaving the coop, right? Leaving the nest.
I have never heard anybody else talk about this. And that's exactly what it was for me. Everything was, oh, this is the last time.
Yeah, it
Sorry
was.
to interrupt.
No, no, absolutely. And so that I was just filled with so much anxiety. So when he left, when he graduated, now you have to remember my daughter was born 1 week before my son went to his senior prom. And she was
Oh,
a surprise baby. So we're all that anxiety about my son leaving, it was kind of like drowned out. I
yeah,
mean, as a mother, I'm still concerned about him, but now I'm like,
yeah.
now my hormones are going crazy because I've just given birth and, all of those things. Um, but yes, so when he left and my son he went to college out of state.
Mhm.
So I'm in California. He went to college in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. And it was really tough. And I had to really dig deep on those days where I was really missing him or I was just so nervous. You know how that mama heart just
Yeah.
never stops worrying. And I had to really, for me, I had to trust God that I had done my best, that I had instilled,
Hmm.
lessons within him. I know his character, and so I just had to find my solace in that. And it worked, and he and I are very close, and he would come home on holidays. And, I remember the first Mother's Day card he gave me when he came after he left, and I could cry even thinking about it right now, just the things that he wrote about what I had instilled in him and how he was applying that to his life at that time. And it was so special. And I had to trust it. And like you said, it's a new dance, right? So now he's a young man. And I remember one time dropping him off at LAX, and it was the first time I think he was flying by himself. the Los Angeles airport, our major international airport. And the sky cap, I'm like helping him, and I'm like, probably looking so worried. And the man comes up to me. Mind you, I had never seen this man ever in my life before. And he says, Mama, let that bird fly. And I'm like,
Yeah.
obvious. And, I had to let him fly, Kathy. And, it was a new dance for us. And when he would come home, I would be so grateful and really present in the moment that he was home, but it was amazing to see how he was surviving, one.
Yeah.
What is he going to eat? What is he going to do? But he was making it. He was living in a dorm. And he did fine. And when he graduated, first of all, the 4 years went by. I'm like, he was just in high school. How did this happen? And he was great, and he came out a man. And I'm like, and I'm loving the man that he is right now. So
Yeah.
there are different chapters to this, and I love uncovering each new chapter with him, truly.
Yeah. I can relate to an awful lot that you're saying. So you had the Mother's Day card. I had the last Christmas of high school, the last year of Christmas, the last year of high school, Christmas time. My son, he also knew that I was struggling with all these lasts, and he wrote me a song. So Christmas morning, he sings me this song like it was like I've never cried so much at Christmas in my whole life. But it was the same kind of thing. It was, I asked him actually, because we often talk about male things, gender things. Like he's probably my biggest supporter and my biggest teacher. But I asked him because, the high school years, going out into the world, there are struggles. Like, everyone finds their footing. And while they're finding that footing, you just hope and pray that everything that you have done in creating the foundation is going to pay off. And I asked him once, is there anything I could have done to support that growth better, to help ease those bumps in the roads? And he said, and it was just it was interesting. He said, I just needed you to trust that you had done a good job and I would get through it. But there are certain milestones that I have to go through to get to the other side. And it was kind of like, oh, okay. But it's, the joy of seeing the man that he has become and not just loving him beyond understanding that concept of love, just really liking the human being that he has become. It's really a gift as a mom to
Yes,
see all that happen.
yes.
One of the things that society in general says about boys is, they are not able to express themselves. They're not able to show their emotions like little girls do. And I wonder how that was for you growing up, because that's not my experience. I think when we say boys, can't show their emotions, I think it's just because they have internalized the message that it's not okay to show those emotions. What was it like, when you were raising your son?
The same. So yes, that is always, I think to this day, feel like it's getting better, but it's still such a stereotype that, young men and men are unable, should not show their feelings. Real men don't cry. Men do cry. I mean, boys cry.
Yeah.
We're emotional beings. We're all having a human experience. And within that, there are going to be times when emotions, arise. And so my son was never an overly emotional young man, not that I can remember, but I would never say to him, ever in my life, you can't cry or you can't express himself. And that just wasn't. that wasn't my belief, and that wasn't the way that I was going to raise my son to believe that. My son is actually someone who does internalize things. He has a very big heart, and so with that, um, I have always found myself wanting to protect that. To protect him. So because he used to, and it's interesting because my daughter is the same. She actually gets stomach aches when something really is troubling to her.
Mhm.
Her stomach, it affects her stomach. And my son was like that for a time as well. So, I don't know. I didn't have an experience where my son was ever told he couldn't express himself
Yeah.
if he
Yeah.
needed to. And I guess I'm really grateful for that because, I think the mama bear in me would have come out and, just fiercely wanted to protect him from that. So, we've been fortunate in that.
Well,
But
I
I
think it,
really don't like that. I really
yeah.
don't like that. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but there's a beautiful video, and I don't know if you've seen it, Kathy, of a young boy. I want to say he's 3 years old, and he's in a car seat with his dad. And if you don't haven't seen it, I'm going to send you the link.
Thank you.
Um, and the dad is recording this boy, and he's telling him that the son, his 3-year-old son, that he's his best friend. And the boy is looking at him, and just tears are welling up in his eyes. And it is the most special thing I think I've seen in 2025 on the internet.
Oh, wow.
It's
Well, I'd
it's
love to see it.
yeah, it's just this beautiful display of emotion and a father embracing that in his son. And clearly his son has been given a space, a safe space to emote that. And it is one of the most endearing, heart-touching things I've seen in a long time. And I love that for our young men, our young boys, and our fathers. So I think it really even speaks to what we're talking about right now.
Well, I can almost say, I can almost guarantee that there is no boy that gets through life that hasn't been made to feel that however they are being a male is not the way that's accepted. Either it's the way they say something, and they internalize that, and that causes problems, down the road. But it goes back again to the same thing. If they have like that one dad, or they have that one mom, or they have that safe space at home, then they
Mhm.
will be okay. They can take, what is coming from the outside, but they're not going to internalize it the same way. And that makes all the difference.
Well,
One of the things with, sorry.
mhm. I was just saying it's generational. It's passed on from
Mhm.
father to son, don't man up, that's not what
Yeah.
men do. And, it really takes that one to break that, to break.
Yeah, and I've seen some really positive things in this, in the generation that's raising boys now, like as far as fathers groups and men doing a little more, diving into their own past, what they're bringing into parenting. So there is a movement going in the right direction for sure. Um,
Yes.
one of the things, one of the focal points of baby wearing is about attachment and connection and that relationship. And when, especially, not especially boys, but when children are going through their teen years,
Mhm.
um, that attachment has a different lens because they are trying to pull away, and you're trying to make sure they're safe while they're pulling away. And that whole kind of the dichotomy between the parent and the child during those years. And sometimes I think it's even more problematic for boys because they will tend not to share, or not be able to share, articulate exactly what's going on. They have a different need to take risks. There's certain things like they don't have that signal. Girls have the signal of starting their menstrual cycle, so they know, oh, now I'm supposed to act a little more mature. Now I'm moving out of childhood. But for the boys, there isn't anything like that. So sometimes the teens can be really turbulent because they flow between like behaving like a child and wanting to behave, closer to moving into manhood. How did you kind of go through that stage and still manage to keep that attachment with your son, that connection?
Mhm. Um, for myself, we were very fortunate to have a very close-knit village. Even his friends. My son went to he went to two schools his entire life. And I had very close relationships with not only the parents of his friends, his lifelong friends, but with the friends themselves.
Mhm.
And so I kind of intentionally really wove myself into those. And obviously, they're not sharing everything with, the mom. But I felt confident enough that even when we had disagreements, he was surrounded by, genuinely good kids and good
Yeah.
families, and were making, good choices. And it's just really about, for me, it was always about intentionally keeping those lines of communication open,
Yeah.
and finding that central vein where we could just talk. Even if we were, a little upset about something, we could come together and talk, or whether it be over mute. We both love music,
Mhm.
we'd be upset and I'm like, did you hear this new song? And, and then that would kind of get the conversation going. And, I'm very fortunate that I feel like my son and I have always had a really great relationship where he could come to talk to me. And of course, there are things I'm sure to this day I don't know. But I think that for parents, yes, as teenagers, I remember doing the same with my parents, just kind of pulling away and really
Yeah.
wanting my own sense of independence, or just feeling like they just genuinely did not understand what was going on, And I always try to be an active listener with my children. And because I remember that feeling as a teenager, just not really being heard, especially with my mother. So I really wanted to be almost the opposite of that. So I was just an active listener, and still to this day I am. So I'd say keeping those lines of communication open are the most important, because when they go
Yeah.
silent, that's when I feel like we have to really worry the most, But if they feel comfortable enough where they can keep talking to you, even though it may not be something that you want to hear, or it might even be hurtful at times, at least they're talking to
Yeah.
you. You have some idea of what's going on, with their mental,
Yeah.
with so much awareness around mental wellness and mental health. I think now more than ever, we have to know, to keep a healthy mindset, we've got to keep talking. We have to keep that communication going, even for teenagers. And teenagers are so hard sometimes. They are so, so hard. But as I said in the beginning, this too shall pass. And I know I have my work cut out for me, because I'll have a teenage girl.
Yeah.
In a few years and several years. But it will pass, and that's also where you have to, um, for me personally, in my own beliefs, I believe in instilling something greater than myself, even in my children, taking them to church and teaching them about religion, because they have to know that in the bigger realm of things, there's a higher power and there's something else, So even if you feel like you're mad at mom or dad, you can go to God
The
and
bigger
talk.
guy. Yeah.
Go to Yes. So that was also very important for myself, to instill in my children.
I think that what you said about communication is, I think that is the critical part of parenting. And I think that understanding the differences between how males and females communicate and working on being actively listening, because I think that is a skill that many people have lost. That the key to everything is being curious enough so that
Hmm.
they will talk to you, like not making assumptions because they're this age, this is happening, and or because they did this, this is what it means.
Hmm.
And being really curious about things that's going on in your child's world
Hmm.
and giving them time, especially boys. Like boys just need to have a little more space before I, as the mom, jump in. Like if I stop talking just for a little bit and wait, um, really magic can happen when you understand a little bit more how to keep those conversations rich and honest and deep. Like that will take you through whatever age or stage your child is going through.
Yeah. And there's something that happens when they get older. They become they much far and fewer with their words, right? And so there's also a creative approach that you need to take in engaging them in these conversations. It's not like, hey, how was your day? And they're like, fine or good.
Yeah.
Like, hey, so, what was the best part of today? Who did you really connect with today? Who'd you hang out with, and just really getting a little bit deeper to really pull it out of them. Because if you take it at just what they're going to give you, you're not going to get much.
That's
So
it. And your connection will start to separate.
right.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be creative because I promise you, even when they may seem so disinterested or frustrated, they'll appreciate that you are at least trying. Maybe not that exact moment, but when they look back, they'll say, I know mom was trying.
Well, the art of questioning, again, is something I think we've lost. Like, but if you can kind of develop that, that opens a whole world of understanding and that connection between you and your child. It can be a really beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, do you think um, children growing up now, and I mean, I could say boys growing up now, but I'll leave it with children. Do you think that they are facing more pressure today than they did 25 years ago? Yeah,
Yes.
in what
Yeah.
way?
And I don't necessarily think it's better. I think it's actually quite toxic to a certain degree. The pressures, first of all, we're in a digital era where the one-on-one, the in-person interaction becomes less and less, and everything is online. And everything online is made to seem like, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing by now, this is what you should be doing, and then you have um, all of these things that appear false, in my opinion, that aren't real, and it's just an influx of it. And it's just, there's a lot of pressure that comes every time you open your computer or you turn on your phone or, even the TV. It just seems like, you know, uh, your life should be going in this way. And if it's not, then, you're not successful. And we know that not to be true. Everyone takes their own path and everyone's path looks different. Um, so yes, I think there's a lot of pressure now. I distinctly remember when my son was growing up, there was like that book, The Tiger Mom, that came
Yeah,
out. And, that was the whole thing. And at that time, I thought that was a lot of pressure, just on these kids, taking their honors classes and AP
yeah,
classes, and everybody's trying to go to the next level, right? And I thought it was a lot. But now it's that times you know, all of the grand visions of what people have and all of the filtered life.
yeah.
And it's not real, and it's so toxic. And I remember my son, I think he was around 15 when I first allowed him to get like a social media channel. And at the rate that it's going now, I don't know when my daughter is going to be allowed to ever have a social media because I won't do that to her.
Yeah.
It's real, and there's so much pressure. Um, there's so much feedback at the same time. You see a piece of content and then you read the comments, and it's unreal just how mean and nasty people
I
can be.
know.
So I'm just like, I don't think I'm not
Yeah.
going to set my daughter up for this. So yeah, the pressures are out of control right now for our young people.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
for
very
adults as
sad.
well. It's very sad. I mean, you and I briefly spoke on it, just even the headlines and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It becomes you know, um on top of setting these false narratives, it becomes it's like zapping the energy. It's
Hmm.
draining one's energy, one's creativity, one's spark, one's desire to do whatever it is that they are to do. And I don't like the toxic state that we're in right now, I feel like, and what our kids are subjected to. And with my adult son, I am constantly checking in with him, Kathy, to see where his mind's at, where his
Yeah.
heart's at. How are you feeling? And because I want to know, I really want to go deep with my son and make sure that he is okay. And if
Yeah.
there's anything that he needs, that we are catching it very early on, however best
Yeah. I think sometimes, I think parents don't, one of the challenges is that because technology is, changing and growing so quickly, that as parents, we don't even know the world that our children are, kind of floating in. And I think
Mhm.
that's why parents, you know, need to to me, it's a requirement to
Mhm.
protect your child from that environment until they're old enough to make, decisions, with a full formed brain developed, that when they're so young, the influence they can have from things that maybe we don't even know that world that they are going into. I think we need to be a little bit firmer with that. So, okay, so it's more difficult for children growing up today. What
Mhm.
about parents? Is it more difficult to parent or is it just different? Because I don't think it's ever easy to
Right.
parent.
Yeah, I don't think it's more difficult. I just think that it's absolutely different. And I do think in a way there are more challenges. Again, because of the digital, and now with AI
Hmm.
and all of the powers that come with that, in not only protecting your child, but then also um, talking to them about it in a way where they don't think that you just don't get it, or you're old
Yeah.
school, or
Yeah.
all those, sayings. It's like, okay, it's the same thing, it's in a different package, right? But this
Mm.
is something parents have always been trying to protect their children from, bullying, or just emotional abuse or mental abuse, or all of the things, right? Just protecting them, protecting their innocence, protecting their well-being, their emotional and mental and physical
Hmm.
health, their reputations, right? We've
Yeah.
always said, like, your reputation is very important, it's very powerful. Um, Now it's been taken online, which is different.
Mm.
Yes, there are still in-person dynamics, but it's a lot of it has been taken online, and with AI, all of the power that comes with it, the false images that can be generated, using the likeness of,
Yeah.
body's child, is really scary, and
Hmm.
is something that parents 1000% need to be aware of, and
Yeah.
protecting their children from where they can, and having those conversations. So while it may not be harder, it's just changed. That whole landscape has changed so much. And I really encourage parents to just educate themselves as much as possible with, what's out there right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. What is the best parenting advice that you've ever received?
Gosh, that's so difficult for me because I've received a lot of great advice. And, I don't know if it's advice that I've received or just something that I have felt in my spirit. And that is just to trust my own intuition when it comes to raising my children.
Yeah.
As we discussed earlier, there are trends, there are fads, there are different parenting styles that will come and go. And at the end of the day, the way that I raise my son is not the way that I raise my daughter. Yes, the core values are there. I'm still instilling the same characteristics and traits in my children. But I use my intuition in dealing with my son and with my daughter. They are two completely different beings. And I think that as a mother, you have to trust your intuition and really allow that to guide you. And if
Yeah.
there's anything that's kind of clouding that, fogging that intuition, to just search within and see what that is and really tap into that intuition. And that's really the best. It's not always easy, but it's the best advice that I could give myself or even give someone else.
Yeah, I agree totally, because that will guide you in the right direction for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to be mindful of time here. So before I finish, I always ask people two questions that are basically just for fun. And the first one is, what would the title be for a movie about your life? And then a little synopsis of your life.
Oh boy. So what is the title of the movie? Was
Yeah.
that the synopsis? Let's see. The never-ending story. And it's not like despair, right? It's just a continuous growth and evolving and all of these chapters, these never-ending chapters where I'm like the butterfly, the caterpillar that grew into the butterfly. And um I think overall in my life, and since motherhood has been such a big part, I've been raising kids now for 25 years. Um, it's raising children has also taught me a lot about myself, tapping into things maybe healed and unhealed from in my own childhood, seeing that in my children and finding that space where I can, grow and come to peace with certain things. And just forever evolving. And that's where I am. I am a lifelong learner. I'm someone who really always I'm always actively listening to people and always looking for new ways to challenge myself or to learn new things. I learn a lot from my children and I learn a lot from life and from the world. And so, yeah, so I would say the never ending story because I never know where my story is going to end. And,
Yeah.
I embrace that. I just keep rolling with the new chapters as they come.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. The last question is picture your son, and he is just getting ready to welcome a child into his own world, his own family. What would you tell him?
Oh gosh, Kathy. Oh my goodness, that's a good one. First of all, I am looking forward to becoming a grandmother one day. My son welcoming his own family, his own children. Just do your best, be there. You have been entrusted with this life, but this is not your life. Give them space to grow into who they are. Obviously, you provide the structure, the love, the nurturing, but you are literally just providing the foundation for this new life to flourish, and enjoy that because
Beautiful.
it's such a magical thing to be a witness to, like to see, I'm sure you feel like this, to see, what my adult son and what my daughter is growing into is just magical to know that, I was just the vessel, but this is what they have carved out for themselves.
Yeah.
And so I would say that enjoy it because, we all know we hear it all the time. It goes by fast,
Yeah.
but truly enjoy it and, to give them space to grow into their own person.
Very nice. Well, before we finish, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to talk about?
I think that we have covered so much. I thank you. You have, really encouraged me to dig deep and think about some things that I haven't thought about in a long time or maybe have never thought about. So thank you for that, Kathy. I love what you're doing here, and I don't have any more to add to that.
Well, it certainly has been my pleasure to speak with you. Um, where can people get in touch with you and understand a little bit more about baby wearing and the products you have and everything about you? Where should they go?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is at Love Aja, Love. My first name, Azja. You can see some of my baby wearing tutorials on the Lilla Baby YouTube channel. That would be at Lilla Baby, Lille Baby. And you can also find me on LinkedIn if you are a professional and you are looking for any sort of baby wearing education. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, I will be sure to have those in the show notes. And I'll just add in that I looked at a video that was on Amazon.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot about all the different kinds of baby wearing products and information behind them. So I thought that was a really
Amazon.
excellent, yeah, as well.
Okay.
So thank you again, Aja. I know how busy life is, and I do hope that you feel I honored your time today. It has been such a pleasure. So, and I know that people will get golden nuggets out of this conversation. And thank you to our listeners for joining in to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and tune in next week for more conversations about raising boys. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're a parent raising a boy in today's complex world, be sure to explore sonhoodcoaching.com. You'll discover expert guidance and support designed to help you unlock your full parenting potential. As Amelia Gambetti says, this job is too difficult and too beautiful to do alone. Together we can explore this adventure and discover the magic of raising boys.